Everyone, welcome. We are back with David Mitlyng. He is going to be giving us some insights into his company, Xairos. We've had the opportunity to speak with David before on the things that they're building there using quantum communication technology. It sounds very sci-fi for anyone who is not familiar with it, and I would love for David to break down more to us what exactly this technology can do and even delve a little into some of the cool things that they have going on since the last time that we conversed.
All right. Thank you, Vontarius. We had a great time with our conversation a little while ago, so it's a pleasure to come back and tell you a little bit more about what we're doing at Xairos. You're right. We have very interesting quantum technology. We're using entangled photons to potentially disrupt and create a new GPS. What we've developed so far is using those entangled photons for very secure and very accurate time transfer. You may ask, well, why does anybody care about that? Time is the foundation for all network applications, all position and navigation applications. You can't get or understand where you are unless you know the time and have that time reference. So this technology has the capability to really disrupt how we get that time distribution out there, the accuracy, the security, and the resiliency of it. So very excited to talk about that more.
Wow. So clearly, this is something that affects everything.
Yes.
My question
Yes.
would be, what industries do you see this affecting the most?
Yeah, great question. So when people think of GPS, you think of your location app on your phone. GPS is great when you're looking for directions to get to a friend's house or something. But the biggest value, the true value of GPS is as a clock for the world. So all communications, all data centers, all power grids rely on that timing signal from GPS. It's kind of the heartbeat that pumps, that synchronizes networks, that allows bits to flow freely within networks. The same way time lights allow cars to flow down a street. So GPS has been great for that. GPS came around at the time that networks were going from analog one-way broadcast to digital multi-point to point communications. And it's been that clock reference for the world. But it's one of those things where, number one, it's kind of a flaky signal. It's easy to jam. It's easy to disrupt. That creates problems with networks. And, just in general, it's kind of at a limit in its accuracy. If there was ever a widespread GPS outage, knock on wood, we haven't seen that yet. But we've had a couple close calls, and if it ever was out for an extended period of time, flights would be canceled immediately. All financial transactions, the ATMs and credit cards would go down immediately. Communications, cell and internet would degrade within 24 hours. And within a few days, you would lose all communications and be sitting in the dark by candlelight, wondering what's going on. So it's really one of those things where this is an important solution I think we're putting forward to create that, at the very least, a backup or a augmented system that can potentially one day replace, but at least back up GPS.
So not having a system like this in place could be very detrimental to the world as a whole. Now,
Yeah, like I said,
I'm curious to know how could leveraging quantum communication technology itself, like how is it going to exactly make things more secure for a global positioning system?
well, so the way GPS works is with an RF signal. It creates this what they call RF one-way time transfer, where you got a clock on a satellite. You essentially want to transfer that time. This is the reference clock for your whole network to every other clock within the network. And it does that by just, you have a signal, very stable, and you change up the phase a little bit. And your receiver on the ground can say, hey, okay, I got that signal. I know the clock on the satellite. I know the time it took for it to get here, therefore I know my time. It's just, basic. And that's fundamentally how RF, GPS, and other systems like that have worked and worked well for decades. Where quantum work comes into play is we're actually leveraging entangled photons, and we're sending the entangled photons between the reference clock to all the other clocks on the ground. And those entangled photons provide the reference to that, provide that information about the time at that reference clock. So it's really kind of a new way of a little bit of a new flavor on a way of doing time transfer. Instead of using just that change in phase of an RF signal, we're actually using the creation of these entangled photons to say, hey, this is the time, but it's more accurate. It can't be jammed. It can't be spoofed. It'll be a much more robust and resilient and accurate system.
So, specifically, what corporations or industries are seeking out this type of technology the most right now?
So the biggest user of this, what they call timing and synchronization systems, are telcos. Think AT&T, Verizon, BT, Telefonica. Every communication network in the world relies on this timing and synchronization coming from GPS. So for us, that would be the end user. That would be the groups that would buy into our system, buy our service. Now, it gets a little more complicated than that because they buy their networks from a big provider, and then we would provide equipment to that provider. So those telcos would be the end-to-end customer. But one of the bigger updates for us in the near term is we've started working with those companies that are network equipment providers. We're starting to line up some pretty interesting partnerships. We're still a ways away from launching our system as a commercial service, but it's been a big step forward for us kind of finding those right partners. In addition to telcos, the other major users of this are data centers, financial networks. Financial networks are very interesting because they like better accuracy to have that low latency system in their network, so high frequency trading and all that good stuff. So yeah, it cuts across quite a few different market verticals, but pretty much anybody who's got a network, a digital network, wants or needs something like this.
Nice. So I'm sure you've been privy to seeing the amount of leverage of AI
Yes.
and other forms of technology of such. I'm curious to know, are these systems being ran by humans or are they partially being ran by AI and machine learning technology?
Well, our system, I can say where AI fits in with our technology and our roadmap. So right now, it's once we get the software up and running, it's still a little bit of a kind of a manual process. There's a thought that when we have a timing distribution network, we can use AI to optimize elements within that network. Because I think AI, you're an expert on this much more than I am. The public, I see, the ChatGPT and all of these applications where it's creating, it's doing writing and artwork, generating artwork. But I also think it has ways to optimize networks, optimize network systems. It's a little bit more the enterprise behind the scenes thing. It's not necessarily up in the public, but that is something I think we can leverage for our system to kind of optimize that timing distribution network. Now, one of the comments I like to make about AI, I'm actually writing about this, and we have a weekly newsletter. There's some recent articles talking about the rise of generative AI, and the negative side of that is they consume a lot of server space. They are requiring a lot of Google just announced they had a 20% increase in their water consumption for their data centers. A lot of that is because people are using AI, and AI is somewhat server intensive. Timing and synchronization is actually one way we can reduce the power consumption and cooling consumption on data centers. It's kind of not very intuitive, but better synced distributed databases work much more efficiently, and they consume less power, and as a result reduce carbon emissions. So I always kind of look at this as, our system could be a good way to offset the increase in AI systems and actually reduce the carbon footprint of data centers. So just, it's kind of interesting connection anyway.
Yes. And see, I really find that interesting because as I see AI as being something that can penetrate any industry, it seems your technology is something that can penetrate any industry as well. Now, I'm curious to know exactly with leveraging satellites and things of that nature, how is it specifically going to play out? I know there are companies like SpaceX looking to
Yep.
create these large internet systems leveraging satellites and things of that. Is it similar to that?
Absolutely. So our system is actually nice because it's relatively scalable. We don't need the tens of thousands of satellites that SpaceX needs to provide broadband internet. So we don't need $1 billion satellite network to start providing time distribution. We only really need one satellite. So in some ways, that's simpler. We don't need that huge mega constellation that SpaceX need. But on the other hand, as a company, it's nice because I could scale up to the point where we have a half dozen satellites on orbit. Um, right now, we're looking at just putting our hardware on other people's satellites. So it could be on like a SpaceX satellite, or it could be on another position, navigation, and timing satellite constellation that would just host our payload. The part we want to take advantage of. I've been in the space industry for many years. I've been fortunate to kind of see the growth and revolution that's been caused by the new space industry. What SpaceX has done, just reducing the price to orbit. Back in the old days, when I built big, very expensive satellites, they were 100 and $150 million satellites, and it cost $50,000 a kilogram to get it launched on orbit. Today, you could build a satellite. Anybody could build their own satellite. It's a couple hundred K for something very basic, and the cost to launch it is roughly a few $1,000s, and it's going down to about a couple $100 per kilogram. So it's just a monstrous change that we could take advantage.
Wow. So I would like to know: any things that are specifically being used with your technology that is going to replace the entire standard GPS system as a whole, or they're just going to be enhancing it?
Well, there's kind of a long-term vision that our time distribution technology could be the backbone of a larger time position navigation and timing system. So it gets a little bit in the weeds, but it's interesting, I think, for people when you think about the world of tomorrow. This vision of a city where you have self-driving vehicles and delivery drones and flying taxis. And the technology is starting to get there. You've seen self-driving vehicles, drones are ubiquitous, but they can't operate or work in large cities because GPS signal is just too weak. It's blocked by buildings. It has multipath. So we're looking at these architectures that provide the position and timing signal, basically the GPS type signal over your cell phone carrier. Because when you're sitting in a large city, you may not get a lot of GPS satellites in view, but you have probably half a dozen cell towers in view, Wi-Fi stations in view. They can provide that kind of what they call last mile position and navigation and timing signal. But those base stations are very, very accurately and securely synchronized. You don't want to be flying in your flying taxi, relying on a network that can be easily jammed with a $20, cigarette lighter, jammer. So this is I think, an enabler for a bigger vision for, hey, potentially providing a service or system that just GPS can't reach. So that's in our kind of our target market that we're going after.
Awesome. So where's this rolling out already? Are there places that we're already seeing your technology be implemented?
Well, right now we're still early stage. I wish I could say we had satellites on orbit and we were, the system is, we had a product you could buy tomorrow. But we're working on it. We're getting there. So we've gotten some funded projects. We have some new projects coming online. Being a startup, we still got to be kind of bootstrappy and leverage smartly, government projects and government funding to get our satellite system on orbit. I'm also in fundraising mode. So, as we kind of close our fundraising round, we can launch our first satellite, start providing some basic service over a large geographical area, and then we can scale it from there. So, but we have built, we built like a nice kind of what we call proof of concept. It's pretty cool for doing demonstrations and stuff. So that's something we're trying to do in the near term is have something we can take around that's portable. We can show it off to people, and then people can understand. Okay, now I understand how this technology will work, and I can start integrating it into my future network plans.
Nice. So is there like a timeline maybe that you could definitely say that we could potentially see things rolling out within X amount of time or within much sooner than most people would assume for this type of technology?
Yeah, the first satellite will take, 24 months optimistically to get launched and on orbit. But there are ways we could roll it out for terrestrial network time distribution in the near term. So that's something we can do well within the next 12 to 24 months. And that's something we're kind of targeting. It's not the wide scale deployment that we would like to see, but I feel like we're kind of moving on a timeline that is marching to where the market need is. As these companies are working on the self-driving vehicles and the drones, they got a lot of work in front of them also. So I think we're going to be coming online right at the time that these systems are ready to roll out and be deployed in urban areas. So I'm very happy with kind of that progress. We're not too late to the party. I think we're just at the right time. We're showing up. The music's starting, the drinks are out. So I think we're timing's good, and we're a timing company. So timing's important, unintended.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, what excites you the most about this? You're building something really innovative, and for a lot of people who are still trying to wrap their heads around even just the word quantum, they're like, okay, this sounds good in theory, but what is the most compelling and interesting thing in your eyes about all of this?
What can I say? I just love the technology. I like my team. We got some truly brilliant quantum scientists on our team, just hanging it out and geeking out with them. They got just some things in their brain that could be beyond disruptive or explosive for the future world. My role, I feel like, is, I'm an engineer, old space systems engineer going back many years. And so it excites me that I can work with scientists, this kind of cutting edge new technology that nobody's seen or done anything with before. And just have that opportunity to take it from the lab or the brain of these brilliant people and take it out into a system. And it's another reason too that I love having this opportunity. It's probably the first time, probably almost guaranteed the first time anybody within your audience has heard of this technology. And that's also kind of fun, right? Just being the first person to tell you about something that maybe 5, 10 years from now is going to be ubiquitous and valuable and interesting for things. It's kind of like, it's like you say about AI. You always remember when you first heard about, AI and AI applications. I learned about quantum only, within the last 5 years, well, about 7 years ago is when I first learned about kind of this entangled photon technology. Um, so it's nice being and exciting just really being in that role where I could, take this out to the world. It's just fun.
Absolutely. I understand that. Now, another thing I am curious about, and this is another one of those technologies that is new to some people, but I feel like there could be some type of integration here, and that would be in blockchain and Web3.
Oh yeah.
Um, and I'm curious, like there, I see people are putting devices, hosting devices on nodes, things of that
Yes.
nature, in order to provide a peer-to-peer infrastructure system. Is that something that is palpable to your company, or is plausible in theory for happening?
So funny you mention that because this isn't necessarily directly applicable to what we're doing, but one of the applications for this kind of entangled photon technology is the security aspect, this creation of symmetric of encryption keys. So there's a whole field now that's looking at what they call quantum secure blockchain, using this entanglement to make sure that it's just that fully secure blockchain system. Um, Part of the reason that entangled photons are valuable is it's essentially starting with a laser. So you got a laser, and you're using this to create pairs of photons that are entangled. And I measure one of those, I send the other one to you. I mean, maybe I'm on a satellite, you're on the ground. But if anybody intercepts the photon that's meant for you, and tries to measure it, try to like glean that bit information out of that photon, the entanglement's broken, and we would both know it. It's really truly a very secure way to kind of send those kind of random string of bits that create an encryption key. And so you could use that within a network, any kind of network, fiber or space or whatever, to create a blockchain that is secured with quantum, with the kind of that quantum entanglement. So now we're not working on that as a company, but definitely that is an application that some of our partner companies are working on. Yeah, very truly brilliant, and I think there are some major companies that are looking to roll out systems like that. Um, and that kind of goes back to a question you were asking earlier about, when's our technology ready to roll out and install a network? This kind of system is already being installed in networks around the world, across fiber networks. And there are some satellites that have launched that provide what they call this quantum key distribution. So, we're not there yet, but those other companies were just drafting behind them because we can leverage a lot of what they've developed.
Wow. um, that piques my curiosity even more that you mentioned someone intercepting a photon. That is not
Yeah.
something that crossed my mind as a possibility. How did you elaborate a little more about how something like that would even occur?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, look, there are, maybe a little bit within kind of commercial telcos and groups like that, but definitely within, military and defense agencies, they obsess over this. This is a big, big deal because, any signal, just any signal, it's an RF signal from GPS, an RF signal from SpaceX, um, just the fiber links, they can all be intercepted and you would never know it. And, if you're really, really uptight about security, if you're really worried about that message you're sending across the globe, you don't want to fall into the wrong hands. Maybe it's your password for your financial information, maybe it's sensitive messages. You're pretty obsessed about this. So, and this is where traditional communications is just people throw their hands up in the air and say, I can't do anything about it because you can't stop somebody intercepting part of the signal that's going out there, right? They can sit on the side, it's passive, they're receiving the same signal you're receiving, and you wouldn't know it. Now along comes this technology, this quantum communication technology that was really invented in the early 1990s that says, you know what? I can send an entangled photon and I will know whether you've intercepted it. It's a completely game-changing paradigm when it comes to security, when it comes to secure communications. So again, we're not the inventors of this. Many companies and groups have put together very detailed security proofs around this, but we're drafting and leveraging what they're doing for this newer application.
Is this kind of bringing into play what you were just mentioning, whereas companies who are using uh, quantum blockchain in order to encrypt that information so that it's not being intercepted and used in that way?
Yeah. 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 So a little bit about encryption. Encryption is kind of interesting because when you encrypt blockchain, you encrypt a message. You're essentially have this where I have you and I, we want to encrypt our message that we're sending to each other, whether it's over the blockchain or just a message. So we'll have what they call just a random string of bits. That's a symmetric encryption key. And it's only secure if only the two of us have that. If anybody else has it, they're going to get that encrypted message I'm sending, and they'll crack it, just as easily as you'll, decrypt it. So this is kind of this is a major concern because the way we distribute these encryption keys today is pretty much foolproof with modern computers, but future quantum computers can crack it within seconds. And this is a known issue. The US government has just recently passed a law that says, hey, we got to prepare for this because when quantum computers get good enough, all encryption as we know it is going to just melt. So we need something better in place. And this quantum encryption capability is considered the foolproof way to do it because it just the laws of physics, you can't crack it. You can't decipher those keys. The proofs are pretty solid, and the laws of quantum physics says now entanglement is just fundamentally anything that's entangled, particles or photons or whatever. They share the same wave. They share the same information, and it's only within the entanglement, and you can't peek behind the door to see what's going on in that system, in that quantum system. This is kind of one of the great things about the quantumness of small particles. It's just you can measure it once, it collapses into a state, but until you do that, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. So with the entanglement, it's the same thing. It's measured once and only once to extract that information. Now I'm cutting some corners there. Quantum physicists are probably cringing when I explain it that way, but that's the way I like to think about it. It's that quantumness means security.
Sounds good. Well, for those focused on security, it sounds good. Maybe not for quantum physicists.
Yeah.
So, to kind of wrap things up, one of my last questions would be for you guys, as you're rolling out, who are you looking to primarily service first? Is it going to be leased out to the public side of things or more on the private side of things first?
Well, right now we've gotten some U.S. government what they call SBIR, Small Business Innovation Research contracts. So, as you understand, with concerns about security and the hackability of GPS signals, that makes kind of natural sense for us. But we are very focused on a commercial solution. We want to use this government projects and funding to build something that is commercially viable. The day, some day down the road where our system's in place and, I can hail a flying taxi that links to our system, that's the target we have in mind. That's the future we want to try to build and enable. So the next step on that is, so we got the government projects. We've got a couple of early adopters lined up with network providers. They're going to be our foot in the door toward rolling this out, launching our system, scaling it, making it global, and then reaching out and doing that last mile piece. So, we're kind of the early stages there, but the roadmap is clear in front of us.
Lovely, lovely. Well, we're going to wrap things up with that. This excites me once again. I'm a tech guy, so I love innovation, especially in the tech space. And I'm glad that you were willing to come aboard again and have a conversation more about quantum communication, about more of what your company is doing and what the future looks like, not just for you all, but in general for quantum communication, GPS positioning systems, um, everything in between. I'm hoping that we can get you on again as you guys are rolling out that program that you have and get to actually see a little bit of how you guys operate. I'm very excited to have you again. So, um,
My
would there
pleasure, and
be
I'm looking
any?
forward to that again.
Yes, thank you. Would there be any questions you have for me?
No, just for you and for your audience, anytime you want to reach out, easiest way to reach out is just go to our website. You can subscribe to our newsletter or email us at info@xairos.com, Xairos.com. But yeah, I look forward to the next conversation. This is, exciting times, and just love talking with you also about our technology and things you're working on too. It's been great.
Excellent. Well, thank you once again, everyone. We have David here. It's amazing. Company is amazing. Please go check them out. Thank you for joining in, and talk soon, everyone.